welcome to Can I Just Say? And this episode we are covering Outlander Season 3 episodes 7 through 10. I have my lovely guests here. I have Lauren Sarner, who's the TV reporter for the New York Post.
Hello, everyone. Good to be back.
And joining us again is Barry Hardiman, senior editor at NPR.
Hi, happy to be here.
Oh, so happy to have both of you here. Okay, there is a lot for us to talk about. So much for us to talk about. Did you all want to start with just like general impressions of these 4 episodes? That's a lot. Maybe that's not so productive. Maybe we should just get straight into the episodes.
They're all so different. It's like such a journey that I think we have to go on the journey.
Okay, let's go on that journey. You ready?
Let's get on the boat,
Yeah,
guys.
I know. Seriously, let's start in Edinburgh, go to Lallybroch, and then go to sea. Barry, I think I might have to apologize in advance for myself and for Lauren because these episodes were very bittersweet for us because
of Black Sails,
because
right?
of Black Sails. Those are our ships.
I knew it. Yep, that's right.
Yes.
Yep.
I'll try hard not to be too obnoxious about it. I messaged Daphne privately with my most obnoxious thoughts.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I thought that the podcasts were for your most obnoxious thoughts. Like I
That's
feel like
true.
Let it loose, because you know what? I'm just
Yeah.
going to do what I've done so far on every single episode, somehow or another, of Can I Just Say? Anyone who hasn't watched Black Sails, especially if you like Outlander, go watch Black Sails already. Seriously, you're going to love it. But yes, those are, for the most part, the Black Sails ships. And we had listeners during our live tweet, which was so much fun, just saying, hey, that's where this happened. Hey, that's where this happened, which was super fun. And then I didn't have to do it because otherwise I would have just live tweeted that for for episode 9.
A story told is a life lived.
Would you tell it to me?
Not yet. Once I tell it, I have to let it go.
So let's start off in Edinburgh, right where episode 306 ended with nothing like the threat of rape.
a good attempted rape scene. It's something about it.
Yeah, I don't feel like we need to talk about that too much. Just, we had a good run of not having that, and then we had it. But what's more interesting to me is the whole...
She's a real doctor now.
She's a real doctor, and she's even more so cannot resist the urge to save people, even if they just tried to kill her.
Yep. Which I found so irritating, but also I cannot help it. It's like, Claire, I know it's been a minute, but you gotta just this is now you're in Edinburgh, like you're wasting resources, precious resources. You know
That's
what I mean?
totally true. Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. I mean, I think I have kind of a thematic thing that I will bring throughout that I think this is relevant to, but mostly I was just, it was just like, didn't we do this in season 2? Like we had the whole burning of a ship and like all the troubles in Paris because of the same thing. So
Right.
Yeah, story-wise, it felt like a step back because it felt repetitive. Like, this is something we already knew about Claire's character, and we didn't need to relearn it. And it was also an episode-wide storyline that had no stakes because, as the viewer, we're in the same position as Jamie, where we're like, we don't care if Claire cures this guy because he's awful.
Right.
We don't care at all. So Claire's whole mission this episode, we are not on board with her, and so it just really holds no weight.
Yep. It felt like wasted time.
Interestingly, I think, it does serve something I would love for us to focus on, which is something I've brought up since season 3 started, and something I love about Voyager, is the idea of Claire and Jamie's essential selves and where people fit and where they don't fit. And so
after time, yeah.
Right. After time in place, like, because, now I can say without spoiling, like they are leaving Scotland. So this becomes a big issue of like, where does each of their identities make sense when they're moving for her through time and space and for him through space? And I think that this fits the thematic thing in that Claire's a doctor no matter what, or she's a healer no matter what. Like she's been a healer from the first moment we met her. Even when they use it in annoying ways in the story, there is this thing, and I think this episode's a really good example of like Claire, there's something that grounds Claire no matter where she is this healing thing. Again, even when it's obnoxious. But I feel like a lot of this episode is showing us how, you know, in the first part of season 3, we watched both of them not be grounded, and then Claire came back to her healing. And Jamie kind of came back to his like leader of men and the fatherhood thing, but like I feel like Claire hit the mark of something that can ground her, and Jamie never did. And I feel like that's what we're seeing a lot in this episode is like that Jamie's kind of still floundering.
He's still lost, which gave him, and it gave him the experience of being like, it kind of made you understand what's going to happen in the next episode of things that had happened while she was gone, that like of a man who was floundering and looking for something to hold on to.
Exactly. The other thing that this bit of the episode served very well, which is like my new favorite thing about this season, the thing I most dreaded was Willoughby. And the thing I most love in this portion of season 3 is I'm not even going to call him Willoughby anymore. I'm going to pronounce this horribly, but I'm going to start calling him Yi Tian Cho because he's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I love that this gave us an opportunity to see when Jamie's being so, you know, morally gray area, but super pragmatic. We have this other character who's like, I really respect Claire for this.
Yeah.
So again, it's just, I think for book readers, this might be doubly delightful. Maybe show watchers don't really care about him as much, but for book readers, because we all dreaded this character's depiction.
I thought they were going to just cut him, and I think they did a brilliant reimagining.
Yeah, exactly. Lauren, how are you feeling about him?
I kind of don't care that much. I mean, I am more on the side of show watchers than book readers in that, you know, I read the book a while ago and like I honestly skimmed some parts starting from now because I was kind of losing interest. So, I'm just, since he's a character we just met, I'm just not as interested in him as characters like Jenny and, you know, other characters who are very engaging. Yeah. There is a way to ingrain new characters like him in the story without devoting an entire episode to a tired plot line, like Claire trying to cure this rapist murderer or this would-be rapist murderer.
Yes.
And so in that regard, I agree with you that they're kind of fixing a very problematic character in a very skillful way, but I don't like that we needed to spend an entire episode on this plot line if the purpose of it is only so that he respects Claire.
Right. I mean, I think also part of the purpose of this, again, I'm not trying to defend this portion. There are a million more ways to do the thing I'm about to say, which is that I think it is important for us to see how much Claire's arrival is, even if Jamie was already adrift, which I think, you know, I feel like they're pretty clearly showing us, and I find that part really interesting. How much her arrival is just dislodging him even further from everything that made sense in his world. You know, what he patched together. So this is doing that really in a very stark way, but again, it's not great in of itself. So there were it's
imperfect in specific, but in larger themes, you can see how it works.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to something that I think totally works, which is Fergus and young Ian.
No.
That is the perfect response.
Oh.
So, Lauren, are you caring about young Ian now? Because, you know, I really would like for you to care about him. It's very important to
Lauren's
me.
a tough cookie. I want her to get it. I want her to like it.
I love her for it.
I would say I care more about Fergus, actually, but I don't not care about young Ian. Like as the MacGuffin that they have to, he's essentially, his role in book 3 in season 3 is to be a MacGuffin because they chase him to Jamaica. But he is a much better MacGuffin than, let's say, I have, you know, superhero movies on the brain since a bunch just came out. You know, they're always going after like magical boxes and things that we don't care about. So he's a very good MacGuffin.
Yeah, he's a good magical box. I love that actor too. Like his little face is just like he's just a darling little puppy.
Yes, he's very much doing it for me. I love how they have him just Right. He's a puppy. Like, he's Jamie's puppy, and he's like, oh, Auntie Claire, I didn't exist yet when you were around, but I will now be your puppy as well. And and I love that about him. I also, as a book reader, love, like, I can see the future versions of him making so much sense in this person. He's going to go through a lot of transformations, and I can see how they're already laying the groundwork for all of that for the person he will be. So that's just, for me personally, really delightful, because he is one of my favorite characters. But yes, the two of them working together, I loved. I totally want them to go into business together. The two of them talking about seduction.
Oh,
love.
So cute.
So
I mean, that's such a little trope that I could watch all the time. Like, I love the advice between, two clueless gentlemen, one more clueless than the other. Like, that's a charming thing. Even in this day and age, it is still a charming thing. That's true.
Even in this day and age. Well, because, it is actually, I would say it's actually a really good example of guys being like all talking about, how to seduce a girl, but in a respectful way.
That's right.
Tell her she's beautiful, give her whatever she wants, and then just keep doing those two things. That's not bad advice.
Right. It beats groping.
Yep. Yes, it does.
Yeah, if we're talking about, like, the extent to which you care about him, that's the scene that really got me, actually.
Yep. Yeah,
that's a good point.
For me, the next episode also, I mean, of course, smart boy offers his auntie whiskey. He knows what's what. He's good.
He knows how to. Yeah, that's right. He sized her right up.
And then he calls her auntie. I mean, I just find that so. I mean, she does bring that up in the next episode. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but I do love that he starts to do this immediately. I mean, I just think that's
the instant connection.
Yeah, the instant connection, and the instant, like, this character thing about him is that he is ready to accept people as family, and I like that in this family, especially if Fergus calls him brother. Jamie calls Fergus my son, which we didn't get much of until now, but we get it a few times in these episodes. Makes me really happy. So I like that, it's like Ian is an embodiment of this beautiful family that has been made up of people who've come to it in different ways. Yeah.
Floating souls. Yeah. It's really, you're right. It's lovely.
Okay, so yes, what else do we want to talk about? Oh, okay. We have to talk about their fight.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so they have a big fight. This is after Ian shows up. I love when older Ian shows up and how they interact, but we'll get into that in the next episode more about Ian and Jenny. But then they have the big fight, which I found annoying mostly. Like, I feel like some parts of it were interesting because it was interesting that Claire takes Ian's side because she sees, like, the way a parent would look at it, and Jamie's looking at it the way a young boy would look at it, and he wants, but it then, I don't know. I mean, I think overall, I feel like since Claire came back, we have a lot of over and over again, like, we fight, we make up, we fight, we make up, we fight, we make up. And I guess there's a way that could feel natural, but it didn't to me. It didn't feel like really a progression that had growth.
That's interesting. I took it on board as, like, part of the way in which they have differed. Like, she's been a parent for so many years. He,
has been denied that. And so again, in that sort of, like, larger story arc, it worked for me. And it's funny. There was something about it. Like, yes, you're right. The sort of in and out of, like, they fight, they make up, they fight, they make up, they have sex, they might, whatever. There was something about that did kind of feel right to me, because it felt like one of those little annoyances you would have in a real relationship. Like you have to stop calling her a girl, she's a woman, or whatever. Like, right. That you haven't. I mean, I'm just using that as an example. Right. Whatever. Like, like those little things you have with your partner. That's not a mistake that Jamie would make.
Yes,
but he makes other ones.
Jamie works. I mean, I can't wait to read, like, Jamie's op-ed about Harvey Weinstein. Like, he has a lot to say about Harvey Weinstein, and I love that about him. But so there was a way in which that worked for me, and it gave us the moment of the sort of, like, low blow of Jamie not understanding what it's like to be a father.
Right. Exactly. And people just keep bringing that up to him.
I know. And his face is really good. He's so good at acting that I sort of forgave what was light about this, because I like watching Sam Heughan do that really well, you know?
Yeah. Totally agree with you. Well, and I like the thing that I do like about this fight, I mean, there's a lot of things I did like about it. I had very mixed feelings about it, and I've kind of gone back and forth. The things I did like about it is the questions of morality, like this question of lying, and she's like, "You've been lying," and he's like, "I'm sorry, have we not, like, have you met us? Like, this is what we do. Like, we lie to people all the time
to survive."
Right, exactly. I mean, again, and she does make the point that this is a big lie, and it's to a loved one and not necessary. So this is a lie for selfish purposes, and maybe that's the difference, is that in the past they've lied for survival or throughout Paris to save all of Scotland. But this
bigger fish.
Right. But this is very much a self-serving lie because I think she is saying, and she's right, that Jamie just wants to have this relationship with young Ian that he has, and is willing to lie to preserve it. Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. And again, this goes to this thing of like what he's going to ask at the end of the next episode, which I think in the book he asked earlier, will you risk the man that I am for the one that you once knew? So it's just, this still is going to this thing of like, who is Jamie? Like, I feel like even though we saw both of them separate, I feel like we have a much better sense coming into this reunion, knowing who Claire is than knowing who Jamie is. And I like that. I like that we are a little concerned that maybe he's not the honorable man that we once thought he was.
Part of that I love is that we have to remember that when they met, Jamie was a lot younger. Like, yes. Jamie was just that, like, Jamie was young Ian.
Yep. He was. And they even showed us that young Ian makes the same mistake about first time sex.
Yep. But so there is that, like, I mean, we saw him go through the traumas that may have made him a man, but we missed the sort of the real, like, who he is when he solidifies, into someone who is just less innocent. And so in that way, I like that. He's a smuggler living in a brothel. You know
right,
what I mean?
Exactly.
He's not just like hanging out with his uncle collecting the rents.
Right. Well, and he was supposed to be, I mean, he grew up thinking of himself as he was going to be a laird and a father and a husband and a shepherd of people. And those were all things that he would have been really good at, but he didn't get to do any of those. Yeah. And I mean, again, this is the interesting thing, is that Claire, as difficult as her life in Boston was, she got to actually develop in the thing that was her most essential individual self. So like, there's the whole thing of like them as individuals and them as a couple. And I feel like the tension between those two things is really interesting in these episodes, because Claire got to develop her individual essential self and Jamie didn't.
Yep.
It was kept from him, and he just kept trying. Like in Ardsmere, he was a leader, but a leader of men within a prison. And with marrying Leary, he got to be a father and husband, but like he got to be a father and not really a husband. Right. And then he even had to leave that. Like he had to leave the fatherhood because the husband part wasn't working out. So I think that is really well drawn for us. And on the flip side, I mean, let's talk about in the other episodes, like how Claire leans into the healer thing, I think, in a way that is not necessarily healthy. So let's talk about that a little bit. But so that was interesting about the fight. So yeah, I guess I'm not like super, like I hate the fight, but I do feel like I think, unlike in real life, I want my fighting in narrative to like have a clear, like, we had this fight and then we had this fight, but we learned from the fight before, and so this is actually taking us somewhere in a way that doesn't happen in real life, because generally with our spouses we do just have the same fight over and over again, forever and ever and ever, but
and then we make popcorn and it's fine.
Right, exactly. But or drink whiskey if you're Claire. But in a narrative structure, I want those fights to actually like fit some sort of
larger
purpose. I want the fighting to also have an arc that makes sense, that like shows progression in a way that again isn't realistic but is more satisfying in a story. And I don't feel like they 100% hit the mark, but I also don't hate it.
It might have felt better if we hadn't had kind of the same fight next episode about the Leary issue.
Right.
That's the one that made me go, okay, they're not handling this fighting very well. And in fact, it's feeling like Jamie and Claire's characters are stagnant, which is not at all how you want to feel in a narrative.
Right.
So yeah, I think if this fight was isolated, it would have been much better.
Although maybe it's important for them to be stagnant while they're still in Scotland, and then for those things to get mixed up and loosened up and changed when they move when they're at sea. So maybe who knows? Maybe it was intentional. It didn't work for me 100%, but it works for me better with what I just said off the top of my head. Okay, the last thing I wanted to bring up about episode 7 was the Campbells. Which it's hard to talk about them without spoiling stuff. So I guess I just want to say that I would like for everyone to remember what Margaret said. How's that? Is that too spoilery?
I mean, let's just assume that it will be in a last time on Outlander part of
yes.
Like, you know, when you hear something, you're like, this is exposition that is going in a front trailer.
Right. Yes. So it is really interesting. But the part that I think is interesting for this section of the show that we're talking about in this podcast is that this is our first introduction to the thing that's going to be throughout of science versus magic.
Yep.
Well, and this is like science versus magic versus trickery because Archie's like, oh, you know, she's a seer. You want me, you know, pay me and I'll tell you what she said. Which anyone who knows the story knows that he has no idea what she's talking about.
Nope.
Margaret believes whatever she believes, but Claire's like, oh, no, she's just mentally ill. This does go to this thing that we're going to now talk about for a few episodes of like, or I don't know, the rest of Outlander, of science versus magic and Claire's fascinating view
journey
of all of that. Yeah. Or whatever she goes through. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, is there anything else you all wanted to bring up about this episode before we move on to Lallybroch?
I was so ready to go to Lallybroch. Like it was just enough. It was almost too long. Like, because in the book, I was like, can I just see Jenny again? You know what I mean? Like, just get me my girlfriend, Jenny.
I know.
But this was, to me, like, still wasn't flabby. But I was ready to leave it. I was ready to go home when, when we did.
I'm really glad that they left out bits of intrigue that we didn't need that were in the book. Because I was concerned. That was like, oh, God, are we going to have another episode before we go to Lallybroch?
Right. I was like, I can't with the surveyor and the... no, I can't. Don't give me that.
Don't care. Yep, we got enough. Oh, right. We didn't talk about the fire at all. Okay, there's a fire.
There's a fire.
Yep.
It looked great.
Yep.
It was well filmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
It was beautiful.
Yep. Okay, good. Awesome. Fire. Things burnt down. Let's go to Lallybroch.
Oh, man.
Oh, in episode 308, I love that the title card is some adult woman putting figs on that platter that those girls bring to Jamie.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, you don't see her well enough. I'm pretty sure it's Leary. I'm pretty, like, I looked at the sleeves. I was like, are these Jenny sleeves or these Leary sleeves? I'm pretty sure it's Leary sleeves. But I was just like, I love that they give you a title card that is going to be kind of important for understanding the mechanics of how this backstory happened.
How it went down. Yeah,
without making it like too obvious what's going on there.
Right.
That made me happy.
I love those title cards so much. I think they're so gorgeous.
I know. It's really interesting that all of them are in motion this season. Like in the first season, I think all of the title cards were still lives of sorts. They were all
still.
They were like, I think they were like most of them were a still life. Like you just saw something. And
I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? Like
there's more movement in it. Yeah.
Right. And so in season 2, you got a little bit of both. Oh, in season 1, I mean, the title card that was totally in motion was, I guess, the first, was it 109, the one where you see like Jamie getting into his kilt and that whole thing, preparing to save Claire. But yeah, I think most of them were still lives. And then in season 2, it was both. And this one, they're always something's happening.
Yep, that's right.
During the title card.
And I'm kind of into that. Yeah, you're right. That's nice.
I like all of it.
Has anyone done like a whole whatever? I should look online to see if there's some, like, I just want to look at all of them in a row at some point.
Oh, I am positive that exists on Tumblr.
Yeah. So it's a Tumblr gift set.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah, there is no way that doesn't happen.
Come on, Grandma Hardiman, get with it. Sorry, guys.
Oh, we exist in the world where Tumblr is more of a factor, I guess.
I envy you.
Okay, so let's just talk about Jenny now.
Yeah, Jenny. Ugh, I love her. I love that actress so much.
I know, right? She's amazing.
And I actually thought she I felt this way every time she's on screen, as far as like book reading to TV watching. Like, she's taking a character that was very well written and really making her own little work of art. Because I didn't like, Jenny was sort of too mad in the book, like too. Like it didn't actually, but I understood how hurt she was.
She's so hurt. I know.
Like when
so
she
beautiful.
said, "We grieved you," like there was something, like I really was like, I got a lump in my throat.
Yeah.
And you could see how that would have, like, that it hurt their family in a way that I didn't see in the book in the same way. And I loved her.
I never even thought about it in the book. Honestly, I never thought about it. Like only watching this episode did I think, like, holy shit, it's not like Claire could have done something.
Right.
But Jenny doesn't know that. Like, that's insane. Like, because of course, if Claire is in the colonies, there's no way she couldn't have, she of course could have written them a letter and said, hey, I'm alive.
Yeah. And also I kind of got, it got you like that they had this relationship, and then both her brother had fallen apart and she had lost this like support system for helping her brother, because Claire was so much a part of that. And like how important it was to have Claire as part of her relationship with her brother that had been sort of difficult and interesting. And anyway, she killed me.
Yeah,
in
me
that
too.
episode.
And I even love, now talk about Ian in the last episode. I love Ian's response to her, because it's also like, it's so full of like pain, but more joy, which was so appropriate for their two characters, that he would be the one who's like kind of will always see the good in people much more than Jenny will.
Yep.
Jenny's much faster
because he's been able to,
and he's married to a Frasier, so there is
right.
that. He's spent a life figuring out how to work around difficult people and difficult situations. Yeah, it's perfect. And it was like, I was a little sad because there is an interaction between them that we don't really get, that was more confrontational from Claire's side. But I was like, you know what? I'm totally okay with it. I think this was just pitch perfect.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I thought it was beautifully reimagined. What do you think, Tough Cookie?
Honestly, scenes like the one with Jenny are the ones that keep me watching this show in spite of my frequent frustrations with it, because it was so elegantly done and so well acted. But at the same time, it's also what makes me frustrated with the show, because I'm like, well, if you're capable of doing material like this, then why do we have tired plot lines like Claire trying to kill a murderer rapist who none of us care about that lasts for an entire hour, when you could give us just this 10-minute, very well acted, very well written scene that conveys all those things about the stakes of Claire's return in a much better way. So it's both frustrating, but also still keeps me watching in spite of my frequent frustrations.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
You're right. That's all the things. It combined the beauty of the tiny relationship, Lallybroch, the best things about being in Scotland. There, it was like everything's crammed into what I love about Outlander.
Right, and this episode was also like my favorite thing about this. None of the fighting bothered me here, because I loved that every single person who was angry was also feeling guilt. Like, this was just, for me, such a perfect family drama, is that everyone who was being prickly was feeling guilt about their past actions, or their current actions, I guess, in this case of Jamie's continuing not telling Claire. But everyone feels bad. Like, Claire feels bad because now, again, little clueless, but I guess she was focused on different things. Like, she maybe should have anticipated Jenny's reaction a little bit, but she feels bad. Jamie, is racked with guilt right now. And Jenny feels really guilty because she basically
married him to, right?
Yeah, basically. To Larry. Right. And so, especially I love the line where she's giving him shit about marrying when your other wife is walking the earth, and he's like, dude, seriously? Like, you did this to me.
Right. That's literally the story of our life. Right. Although I will just say that thing of everybody who's mad is also sad too. I just want to take this as a PSA before Thanksgiving, before everybody sits down to Thanksgiving tales.
So
and let's
true.
all remember that we're mad because we're sad.
Right.
So that's just a little inserting a PSA into Can I Just Say? It's from me, your friendly therapist who has 3 of my own.
Thank you, Barry Hardiman. This is very
You're welcome.
true. And
Here
yeah,
for
no,
you.
but this is part of what I loved about it. I do love dysfunctional family dramas. That is one of my other favorite things.
Word.
And I just, they did it so well because you can really see that every harsh word, and there are a lot of them being thrown around in this episode, every harsh word relates to what the person speaking it is feeling uncomfortable about in themselves.
Yeah.
I just felt that was, this is just masterful. That is tempered a little by the whole, like, why don't they tell Jenny question. They explained it. I don't love it. I kind of want them to just tell Jenny, honestly.
They told Myrta.
Right. And they tried to explain, like, Jamie tried to explain why that's okay. I don't buy it. Like, I honestly
don't either.
Because Jenny even said,
Seems
like,
so impractical.
right. Well, and Jenny even said, like, I didn't ask questions. Like, you told me to plant potatoes, and I did. And I don't know why you said that, but it saved my family. It's just like,
so I'm there. Like
right,
I already,
exactly.
I'm invested in whatever your crazy is.
Exactly. So I wish they had. I was like, tried to think about, like, you know, the butterfly effect of like what that would have done. And I was just like, no, actually would totally still work for what I know of this story. It would have been fine.
Yeah.
So
I
that
agree.
makes me a little sad. So yeah, very good episode. That one thing, don't love. Yeah, I could just go on and on about like all these examples of when Jenny's awesome, but I guess we don't really have time for that.
I love the Selkie Island sequence and just the way it's filmed and the music and Jamie dramatically swimming. Just that's what I love about Outlander. Just kind of the dramatic, like,
right.
would be silly if like the actors weren't so committed and the scenery wasn't so beautiful.
Right. And it's just like,
out.
this is a historical romance, people. What did you expect? Like, you're going to get this. It's going to be gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
I know.
In the live tweet, there were a lot of people who were like, why are we having this flashback? And I was like, because I'm enjoying it.
Right, exactly. I loved it.
I loved it too. I wish
also the whole book is made up of flashbacks, basically. Like, that's how the book works.
Right. And it's like it's an adventure story from the beginning. Like, it's a romance and it's an adventure. We always have these moments and they're great. I mean, I think the show does those moments really, really well. And
beautifully,
fun. And especially in an episode like this where it's balanced so much with like really small, intimate moments to have this kind of grandiose thing is fabulous. I wish that they had left in that all of the sons had swam there, like that this was part of the family tradition. I just loved that in the book.
Right.
In the book, when Ian does the swimming, it was like, oh, it's my turn because my brothers did this before me, and Jamie had been. I don't know why they made that choice. It's so interesting because I just love the idea that this had become part of their family tradition. That whenever they're short on money, one of the sons,
they go to the bank.
Right. Basically, that it had been
Selkie
their
bank.
Yeah, and it just, I don't know. I just love that. Yeah. It's just like, it does not a big issue. Just something that I always loved about this bit. All right, let's talk about Leary. Which I shouldn't have said that. I'm not a Leary hater. Oh my God, I totally just said that in a way that's like...
Well, no, you didn't. You said it like Leary because she's the thing, whatever. She's the wife in the attic. She's the Bertha. Not Bertha's fault either.
Oh my goodness, she is kind of the Bertha. No, totally not Bertha's fault. That's true. We just talked about Jane Eyre also.
I know. That was for you guys. A little love note for you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, okay, let's talk about it. What do y'all think about how they did Leary here?
I don't hate Leary. I didn't love the way she just the way she arrives. It feels very almost soap opera levels of melodrama. I don't know why something like the Selkie Island type of drama works for me, where sometimes the interpersonal stuff doesn't.
That is interesting. That's true.
Because I guess I think the show does adventure drama well, or just maybe non-speaking drama well, but just it just kind of felt catty, like as in cat fight.
Yes.
I mean, of course, when you learn the backstory, she has a very good reason to stomp in and be mad at Claire. And of course, Claire has a very sound reason to be very infuriated that Jamie married her. But the way it plays out feels a little bit Jerry Springer.
That's so funny. I know what you mean. I felt that it did more in the book. It felt very Jerry Springer.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's much better.
Way worse in the book.
Yeah, way worse in the book.
But I thought what was really touching was the again, the flashback reconstruction of the dance.
Oh my goodness.
Made me so sad.
I know.
And so like I just forgave Larry for like a long time. Like I was just like, oh man, that was, I thought that was so beautifully done. And I also, I don't know. I mean, there's something kind of funny about this plot point, and that in this like highly sexist society, Leary is going to get away with like an appalling amount of like child support and alimony, and she's the one who shot him. It's like, why couldn't this have worked? Like, anyway, there's a little bit of like, it's not quite a whole garment, but I thought that that little flashback solved a lot of the problems of this Leary episode.
I agree. I think that they made the storyline in this episode less crazy, believe it or not, show watchers, less crazy than it is in the book. And that flashback is everything. I mean, that flashback is just like, if we hadn't totally understood the extent to which not being a father is a big deal for Jamie, this flashback just so did it.
Yep.
And again, this was only 2 years ago. So what we're understanding is like all of these things we said about Jamie in the beginning of season 3 was really true up until 2 years ago. He was still, he called himself a ghost. He said, I was here but not here,
right. Home but not home. Right. That's a lovely piece of writing in the book too.
Exactly. And that we get to really see, it's like we know this in the book. I think he explains it, but like, no, I think it's centered more in Leary. Like they center his motivation more in the girls here than in Leary herself.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that they make it about his need to be a father, and that he's, that he has this hole of these missing children, and how these girls are offering him that. And yeah, it's just so beautifully done. Like you just see it immediately. You just see this change happen in him, and that, I don't know.
Yeah, it was really, it's really like his loneliness is really palpable.
Yes.
And also, by the way, when they do that moment where he's like, "Who's your mother?" and they catch eyes.
Yeah.
And Leary looks tired and sad and whatever. Like, I just instantly was like, "Oh, Leary, it's been tough for you too, girl."
Oh yeah.
It's like, I feel you.
I see. I always have. I've
yeah,
always,
no, me too.
I'm okay. Except for the whole like trying to kill Claire thing, but
right.
But but even though she was a teenager, I mean, it's just like I've always had a lot of empathy for.
This is what the
for
Crucible
Larry.
is.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Exactly. It's just she's right. She's had a rough life, and it's just I've always found it fascinating that fans of this story are dislike her so much. And I feel like the show and Nell Hudson. Oh right. You talked to Nell Hudson. Oh
yeah, I did. And actually, as a fun little aside for anyone who didn't do any extra reading about this episode, so what she revealed to me is that the wig that Leary wears in this episode is the same wig that the actress who played her grandmother wore in season 1.
I love that. I know. Isn't that wonderful?
I love it.
Yes. Yes.
It's such a fun little bit of continuity.
Doing it right.
I know.
Doing it right.
All right. I will put a link in the show notes to Lauren's interview with Nell Hudson. But yes, I think that Nell Hudson has done an amazing job of humanizing a character that is so hated by the fandom.
I know. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy. And right, I feel like we all should have sympathy. I mean, Jamie's story about her having been abused, I mean, it's just interesting. Like, I feel like he deserves a tiny bit of criticism. Like, he's pretty mean to her for not, for something that he recognizes probably comes from a history of abuse.
Yes. Yeah, come on.
Right.
Like, yeah, if he should understand. Yeah, I agree with you.
And this is where I think that the high alimony makes sense. I mean, I do think that, this is.
Although it is a little bit absurd. I mean, it's also just a transparent, like, we need to get these people on a boat.
That is exactly
Talk about a MacGuffin.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like they just stick that in young Ian, and they're just like, all right, guys, come on.
Right. They are literally looking for
Hispaniola.
Right. They're looking for a box of power.
Right. Right.
But the pirates get it first.
That's right.
So yeah, so that's most of what I want to say here. But I think that this, again, there is this interesting thing of like, we're really, even though we saw the first 3 episodes of this season, I feel like this episode, even almost better, in a better way, shows Jamie's loneliness. And again, to this thing of their essential selves, like he just had nowhere to express that at all.
Right.
And he tried, right? He just kept trying valiantly. And this was another attempt. And it just he always was a near miss, you know. He just never
he always gets
managed
spoiled
to,
in some way. I mean, God, he is just like Calamity Jamie.
Yes, pretty much, right?
Calamity
and Jenny
James.
doesn't, and Jenny, Jenny actually recognized that. So there was a great line, I forget what it was. It's like, you know, I won't argue that my brother finds trouble or something.
Right. It's like,
it's such a great line.
10 books of it, dude. Yep.
Well, I think the Larry thing kind of connects to what we talked about last time we recorded about the Geneva thing, in that and that often in the books, characters who are not Claire, who desire Jamie, are kind of painted a little bit one-dimensionally, and kind of cast in a somewhat villainous role. And so it's pretty easy for them to be vilified by the fans. And I think this season in particular has done a really good job of giving them more depth, like we saw it with Geneva, and now we're seeing it now with Leary.
Agreed.
Okay, I wanted one more thing to bring up that it will take us into the next episode, is that we got in episode 7, we got Claire's proposition of how they could lead their lives now. And then in episode 8, we got Jamie's. Claire's proposition was for her to start a medical practice in Edinburgh and, you know, move out of that brothel and all. And
I don't know why. It looks so good, and I want to stay in that B&B brothel, that bed and brothel.
I know, and I kind of like want to hang out with Madame Jeanne, to be honest. Like, she seems pretty great.
I don't know what Claire's problem is. She's so uptight. Just kidding, guys. I love her. Just kidding.
It's okay. And then Jamie wants to start a life in Lallybroch, and that's also really interesting to me, because Claire, I feel like, because she's grounded in her healer thing, like she's kind of
like, I need this if I'm going to be here.
Right, but she's like, I've got this thing. I can do it anywhere. Right. So I could set up here in Edinburgh. I did it in Boston. I did it, you know, at Castlereagh. I did it everywhere. Like, so let's just let me do my thing here. This will work. And Jamie is looking backwards. Like, Jamie was supposed to be Laird of Lallybroch, but he's not. And he just said that I was home here, but not home. And yet the best proposition he can come up with is, let's set up here, because this is what I know. And for me, that felt like Jamie grasping at
straws.
Grasping at something that was once home. And maybe a more optimistic way to look at it is that, like, now that he has Claire back, it could be home. But for me, it felt like that there's this divide between them. That again, that Claire knows herself, and maybe Jamie doesn't. Like, maybe this whole idea of who is Jamie and taking the man he is now for the one we once knew, maybe that's almost something he's saying to himself, because he doesn't seem grounded to me at all. He seems like he doesn't, like, who is he? Is he a printer? Is he a seditionist? Is he is he all of these other things? Is he a smuggler? Is he someone who's tied to the land in Lallybroch and his family and his former tenants? Like, she just traveled 200 years in time, and yet she seems more grounded than he does.
She's still like, I'm Dr. Randall.
Right. I'm Dr. Right. Well, I'm Dr. What I wrote this in the notes. Right. I'm Dr. Beecham Fraser Randall. Right. Malcolm.
Right. But even the fact that he doesn't have a name, he's Alex Malcolm. He's I mean, all of this stuff. Like, he doesn't. There's no central identity for him, and that's a bummer for anybody.
Yes, and actually, that's a bit of a missed opportunity. I think I think
you're right.
In the book, actually, they don't use Fraser still on the ship, but they do in the show, and in the book there's an important moment where they start being Fraser again, and so I was a little sad to have them calling themselves Fraser on the boat.
It's clear that there's so many nice little moments, and they clearly had to kill some puppies when they in the edit, you know.
Yes, right. Yeah, no, they puppies were killed. For sure. That just happened to be one of the puppies I really am tied to.
Oh, I know. I like all the puppies.
All the puppies. All right, let's get on the ships. Oh, the ships. Okay.
Oh, the
Trying
ships.
not to be too nostalgic and sad now.
Why don't you have a moment where you are nostalgic and sad? Just go for it. Wallow in the nostalgia. Do
Okay,
it. Raise
okay.
the sails.
So they did explain in the little thing afterwards that the Artemis was actually their ship that they used at the end of season 1. So like there was a lot of discussion in the Twitter conversation during the
Then.
So like my belief is that the exterior is the Artemis was their ship from season 1, but that everything you see below decks and on the decks seems like Black Sails sets.
It definitely does.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. No horseshoe. There was no horseshoe in Black Sails. And no Jonah. But yeah, it was really fun to see stuff, and it was really hard to see stuff. But yeah, my belief is that the Artemis in decks are the Walrus, and that the Man of War is the Man of War.
Oh,
I know.
Also, I wish they hadn't called the episode "The Doldrums," or like
Yeah,
they had, because that's a thing in Black Sails.
Yeah, that's a really
Black
important
Sails
part
does
of Black
it so
Sails.
much better, so it just draws attention to that.
All right, so this is where we have to get into all of the different references. Is that they're not referencing Black Sails at all. It was really I wanted them to be more than they were. Like they are so much referencing Master and Commander here. They are full on, and which also has doldrums. Like that was the weird thing. Is like I was like, wow, in the span of 1 year, I'm now covering another story where you have like doldrums and what happens to make the wind come back, and what the multiple interpretations of that could be. But yeah, Barry, someday when you watch Black Sails, there is an incredible episode that is set that is the whole thing. I'm
so excited. I have a plan.
You do?
Because I have a work trip coming up. So
What?
I'm gonna I got a plan. I got a whole plan to do Black Sails. I got a work trip coming up. I'm not gonna do any dinners with I'm sorry, colleagues. Not happening.
I got
Be in
pirates.
my room. Yeah, I got pirates. I'm gonna be in my room with a pirate. Okay.
Doldrums aren't even
Okay.
really doldrums if nobody wrestles a shark. Like what amateur?
The Black Sails reference.
I like it. Sounds good.
Yes, Barry, you'll have to report back to us.
Is wrestling a shark a euphemism? Just asking.
No.
We're not
Just
going to say
saying.
anything. Yeah, Barry, you'll have to report back to us
I
about
will.
which pirate you would like to be hanging out in your room with.
I will. I like how you made that very, very clean. Yes. Which pirate I would like to be like putting the mint on my pillow?
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
got it. Cool.
It's
Noted.
a very important question. Enough about that. So yeah, this is very much for anyone who would like to hear about Master and Commander. Elizabeth and I talked about that in the first episode of this very podcast. But yes, I feel like the references in these doldrums are way more that also because you have a Jonah and then doldrums. And then in my interpretation of it, a sacrifice, and then not a sacrifice of the Jonah, but a sacrifice that you think they need to sacrifice the Jonah, but somebody sacrifices something else. And that's what brings the wind back, which is exactly how it worked in Master and Commander. So I'm not sure who in the writer's room is a big fan of books, but I'm thinking the movie. I mean, I feel like this was such a clear reference to the movie. And then we have the Hamlet stuff.
Yep.
I mean, are we just supposed I couldn't make a connection. Lauren?
They kind of felt like the writers were trying to be smart without really like thinking it through. Like they were just like, "Oh, we'll sound smart if we toss that in," and without trying to thematically weave it in
That's
a good
as far
way.
as I got with the Hamlet.
The way a show like Black Sails does. All right, I'll stop.
Right. If Black Sails was making Hamlet references, they would be
Right, then we
super
can too.
important to understanding the motivations
So
of the
that
characters.
wasn't a book thing then.
Nope.
I just don't remember.
Nope.
Because I thought, it must be. I didn't even think. Okay.
I don't
I
believe
believe you.
so.
I haven't read it in a while.
I don't feel like the captain of the Artemis was as much of a character, and like he was
Yeah,
not.
I don't think so either.
He was not in conflict with Jamie. Like there was just
No.
not.
Oh no, that I remember
Right.
was not.
So,
but anyway, yeah.
Right. He wasn't. They're right. They threw a lot of conflict into this episode that is not at all part of their experience on the Artemis. All conflict in the book has to do with the porpoise, like has to do
Right.
with that whole storyline. But this whole Jonah thing, again, it speaks beautifully to this question of science versus magic. So like I think it's really interesting on that level, but doesn't actually have very much to do with the rest of the story of Voyager.
No.
I mean, except one thing. Okay, so we'll get into the Yichen Cho part, which I do think speaks to the larger themes of Voyager. But okay, now that we've talked in larger terms,
Larger themes.
yes, let's talk about Marcelly. I was very excited about Marcelly. How are you all feeling about Marcelly?
Love. I mean, I also love the whole, like, I actually really love this actress because she's not conventionally, she looks like her mom. Like, there's something about her that's like, because Fergus is so like devastatingly handsome.
Yes.
And she's just like a sharp little hotness, but like not in the conventional way. Like, I'm not trying to denigrate her looks. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She looks, and the first thing you think in her face isn't you're hot, but you're intelligent.
Yes.
And I love that her sharpness and intelligence is so much in evidence immediately. And that back and forth with Jamie, where she's like, "Well, here's what I'm gonna do," and it just was darling. I loved it.
All right, Lauren, how are you feeling about Marcelly?
I'm feeling really good. Yeah, she's really interesting so far. And I'm glad to get a younger female character who can interact with Claire. And she is a bit of a rival at first, but it's clear that she's smart enough that that's not going to be like a tiresome plotline that's drawn out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And not to keep hampering on Brianna, but like I'm glad to get a younger female character who is engaging and interesting.
Yes.
Right. Who's not
necessarily the case before.
Right.
Right. Like, I guess you're right. That's the other reason why I reacted so well to her, because I was like, oh, you're not just hair. You know,
not at all.
You're more than a really nice color.
Yeah.
And that is true. It's not distracting. Yeah. Very good point.
Yeah, no, she's fantastic. I love her. In our live tweet, there were a lot of mixed reactions to her, which I found interesting because I took to her immediately, and I loved her tone because it was like almost somewhere between what you would expect of Leary and something you would expect of Jenny. And I just felt like it just, which for a character doesn't make any sense because I'm sure that Jenny wasn't a big part of her childhood, but it just fit for me kind of like in the spectrum of characters that we're going to get. I just felt like she fit a really nice place that we haven't had yet.
Mm-hmm. Like a sharp Scottish bairn.
Yep.
I love the way she says the word whore. Like, whore. I can't even say it.
That too.
I agree. I couldn't stop. I kept pausing it and being like, trying to like hooer it up myself.
That's not
Couldn't
bad.
do it.
Good rolling R there.
I was trying. Steve was like, what's happening in there? I was like,
nothing. Just working on my Scottish swearing.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
No, one thing I wanted to ask you, because I'm not sure whether or not this was in the book. In the scene when Jamie and Claire have sex and then afterwards they're talking and then she says something about that if Jamie was in her time, he would be the king of men.
Yep.
Yes.
That to me seemed like a meta reference because doesn't like the fandom call him that, but not necessarily, right?
Yes, and I feel like someone did say I also thought this was just a fandom thing, and definitely like the production calls him that. I think it is in the book somewhere. Yeah. I feel like this actually does come from the book, or
I don't know for sure. But
that's why I know.
Yeah,
I meant to look that up.
It stirred something. Yeah,
right. And
although it was also like if you liked her gray hair so much that you'd be fine in the 21st century too,
right.
y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
Like my door's open.
Well, that's what she's saying.
Yep.
I think. I don't know. People have to like tweet at us and tell us.
Yeah,
I don't remember if it's in the book. It's something that I've heard so much now from the fandom and from the production. I mean, this is something that the producers and the writers always joke about.
Mm-hmm.
So it does almost feel like it might be exactly that, Lauren. It might be just a meta thing of the talk about Outlander and not.
Yeah, I was like, is this an inside joke? I was kind of pulled out of the moment because I was like, what?
Oh, right. Oh, God. We didn't even talk about Secrets Not Lies. Okay, sorry. Jump back to last episode for 1 second. I don't forgive you, show, for not putting Secrets and Lies in the wedding, for not putting it in the wedding episode and putting it here. Too little, too late. I had to say that. I just had to say
it. Was it not in this wedding episode?
It was not in the wedding episode. Sorry. He said...
It's in my head so much that I assumed it was.
The most important line of that part of the book. No, he never said that.
But
in the wedding episode, he said, "If you tell me something, let it be true." But he never said "Secrets Not Lies," and I was one of the people who was very vocal about. I cannot believe you left that line out. So I
didn't know. I didn't remember that.
It doesn't. It makes it almost worse that it ended up in 308. I'm sorry. Like she said back the line to him that he said to her at the wedding in the show, and then said "Secrets Not Lies." I'm just like, nope. Nope. You're not forgiven.
Oh.
Okay, sorry, just had to do that if we were talking about meta stuff like that.
No, you're right.
Okay, so we love Marcelly. Yay. I'm really glad that we three are all in agreement on that because that totally works for me. But yes, 2 Secrets Not Lies. I really think it's pretty great that Marcelly and Fergus are offering us a relationship that is actually that right now because Jamie and Claire are like so far from the mark. And so I just love that Fergus like, yeah, I've told her everything. He's like, everything? And he's like, oh, wait, okay, let me go tell her that other thing right now.
Yeah.
And then Marcelly's like, yeah, now Fergus has told me everything. Still want to marry the dude.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Love it. I love it. I was like, yes, the young people. I mean, again, their lives slightly less complicated than Jamie and Claire's.
Millennials are great. I'm for them. I love this
1800s millennials, great.
I know, totally. Yep.
Yes, they rock. All right, so let's talk about this horseshoe and our Shakespeare quotes that are right. The Shakespeare quotes are all about believing things that you can't see and demonstrate, and that's, I guess, all they serve. And I guess that to show that, I don't know, they don't even show that the Claire and the captain are like speaking the same language. Like in a way they're speaking the same language, but they're not really ever.
I mean, to me, it actually stood out because I was like, wait a minute, would the captain like have that much knowledge and respect for Shakespeare? I feel like Shakespeare, I don't know. I'm not a historian.
I think a captain of a naval ship would probably be pretty well educated. You know,
I don't know.
Think about James.
Like well educated, but was Shakespeare kind of in the canon to be educated about at that time, or was this not till a little later?
This is true. This just came up in our latest episode of Fathoms Deep, actually. In our latest episode of Fathoms Deep, I spoke to an academic who studies early 18th century literature and said that as important as Shakespeare is to us now, he actually was not considered that important to learned people, or learned men, I guess I can just say learned men because that's who would have been learning that stuff. To learned men of that period, he would not actually have been one of the more important parts of the canon.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yep. So yeah, actually, Lauren, you're totally right.
Like at first I was actually like, ooh, does this mean he's a time traveler too? And I was like, oh wait, no, the writers might have just like gotten confused. I'm thinking through this too much.
Or not done that super, super, super specific homework.
Right.
That's true. Just had that conversation a few weeks ago. So yeah, what I do want to talk about is like this whole thing of Claire being a person who traveled in time and yet is totally unable to recognize that things we don't see might have some truth to them. Or things that we can't scientifically prove. A lot of people are annoyed by this. I'm actually never annoyed by this because I think this points to a really essential part of Claire's personality, what she talks about with Elias Pound of compartmentalization, which is not, I think, a word that Claire ever used in the book. But it seems like a very modern word to me, and I don't have the history of that
it seems like a word that that seems like just purely my therapist.
Right, exactly. That seems like possibly, the even 60s Claire wouldn't necessarily have been a word that she used a lot, but whatever.
Right.
It's a great word for who Claire is. And I think that, so I love this tension between what her experience and her grasping to science. And this for me goes to this whole thing of like their essential selves, is that having just said in the last, talking about the last episode, that I feel like Claire's really in touch with her essential self and Jamie is not. The flip side of that is that maybe Claire is leaning too hard into her essential self and kind of holding on for dear life to it. Whereas Jamie is someone who's able to accept the world even
as
if
it
it's
is
crappy and he's unrooted and all of that. He's maybe the one who's a little bit better at not fooling himself.
He's better equipped to handle the vicissitudes than she is, because he's already been uprooted for so long. And it's also a function of the culture he grew up in.
Well, there is that, right? There is that. And he did say at the beginning of this episode, he asked if he's being punished, which is actually one of my favorite conversations from the book. If he asked if losing Ian was his punishment for getting Claire back. Right. And yeah, I love that about Jamie, because in the book, I feel like it pinpoints a part of him that I don't feel like they're really leaning into in this season, of his responsibility for other people, that he has an overwhelming responsibility feeling of responsibility for everyone around him, and that he never really thinks about himself. Like the idea that he doesn't.
You got it in Ardsmer, but not in the. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like I got that in response to Fergus and Marsali's presence, and their declaration of his reaction to their marriage or hand fasting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of hand fasting. I really,
Me too.
I just love the idea of that tradition.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's an interesting way you could look at Claire and I think in 310 that works really well too. This idea that she's like, as a person who's traveled through time, her not being able to believe anything might be because she is fooling herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you all have anything you want to say about that? If not, we'll move on to the Jonah.
Oh, the Jonah.
So yeah, the Jonah storyline doesn't really work for me. And I guess this doesn't work for me because I've seen, again, what we said in the beginning, that doldrums have been dealt with so much better in both Black Sails and Master and Commander, where like it's really that the state that the ship's in is significant to the state of the characters in an almost mythological way.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they almost did that. Like they wanted to do that maybe, or they just wanted to throw a Jonah and some doldrums in.
I think they thought they were doing that, especially with tossing in some Shakespeare quotes.
Right.
But they didn't really follow through in a meaningful way.
Well, and the only way it does work for me is with Yi Tian Cho, is that
I love this.
Right.
Yeah.
So he says, and this is, I feel like, very significant. His character, as much as I hate the depiction of his character in the book, the one aspect of him that's important to me is that he is an extreme example of someone who has migrated from place to place and been uprooted.
Mm-hmm.
And so he becomes a symbol for that, which is something that is very important to Jamie's storyline. I mean, and Claire's kind of ultimately always, but so I love this line he says when he's talking to Claire when she first sees him doing the calligraphy, and she asks if she can read his story. He says, "A story told is a life lived. Once I tell it, I have to let it go."
Ugh.
Which is beautiful in of itself, but I think it is also very significant to Jamie and Claire because they both have stuff they're holding on to up until this point that they can't let go of. Like she can't let go of her grasping to science and like this identity that she has that is helping her survive all this crazy, but and that Jamie needs to he has now left Scotland. Like his whole identity was bound up in Scotland, and now he's had to leave it and be on the sea, which we've already established is like where Jamie's
not his happy place.
Right. This is like the farthest away from his natural environment as could be imagined.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like, you could look at it this way, that again, this is so informed. So it just might be crazy. Like this is so informed by other stories that have used doldrums and a Jonah for me to like maybe be grasping at straws here. But for me, it's really interesting that at the end, when the wind comes back, you have this series of events. Is that Yi Tin Cho sees the seagull, right? And
he knows that,
right. And then he interrupts everyone when they're about to kill Hayes. Hayes, yeah, that's his name. They're about to all fight with each other over Hayes.
He distracts them, right?
He distracts them, tells a beautiful story. So he tells the story that he's about to now he's going to have to let it go. And then he says, "By not surrendering my manhood, I have lost all else." So he's speaking so specifically to this exact idea that if you hold on to something when a new opportunity is offered to you, you lose both.
You lose that opportunity. Yeah.
Right. You lose the opportunity and you lose the thing you were holding on to, which, is such a beautiful embodiment of how people have to move on. Like exactly what you said, Lauren, about them stagnating. Like they have to stop. They have to stop being in a cycle of the same thing over and over again. This is what I said, like where the fighting over, like same fight over and over again kind of works for me. Because like now, and then he releases those pages and the wind picks up and again, back to science and magic. Like we could say, sure, like his explanation, like, oh, I saw the seagull and so I knew the wind was coming. So I was just creating a distraction. But we know this means more to him than that.
Yeah.
We know how meaningful this action was to him. So part of it, I do want to tie into other stories, the doldrums, is that when someone sacrifices something, that's when, kind of the world is back in harmony and the wind comes back because the world is back in harmony.
And that's what being a human is about.
Exactly.
Like, you can't get to harmony until
Exactly.
I mean, hopefully it's not Iphigenia or whatever. It's like, yeah.
Exactly.
It does feel a little iffy that he's the one who sacrifices it in order to serve everyone else's plot.
Yes.
And that kind of that to me does get to the same problem of his character in the book.
Right.
He's kind of occupying the magical non-white other role.
Mm-hmm.
Not to quite the same extent that he is in the book, but it still feels a little bit gross.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Except that Gary Young is like,
oh
not
my God.
except, and, and at least what Gary Young is doing with it is so particular to his, I think, incredible acting. I mean, just killing it. You know what I mean?
Killing it. He really is killing it.
Oh yeah, it was a beautiful scene, but just kind of in the context.
Yes.
Right.
It's like I'm having trouble keeping both of those things in my head, like his beautiful acting and this is really problematic.
Right.
As I am with everything in the world.
Right. Right. Well, yeah. And this is, again, right. This would have worked so much better. I mean, and I feel like they're very explicit at making this choice. It's like the minute he does that, suddenly Jamie and Claire are like having what I see as like the first good sex scene in this season, even though, like this, I felt like
it was
that
enough
was it.
for the wind to fill their sails.
Right. Exactly. And it was like, seemed like the first kind of naturalistic, like just joyous sex scene that they had. Like, so it was like, yeah, he sacrificed. And so now they're renewed. They should have been the ones to sacrifice. Like, if this story was correct
also
in my eyes.
Also because of the acupuncture. You know what I mean? Like, everything about it is like, yeah, exactly.
Well, yes, he is serving them well. That is true. So, yeah, it's like thematically it works for me. I would have liked it better had it been them.
Or even like Fergus or Marsali or someone else.
Could have been any other minor character.
Yeah.
Right.
Ancillary.
Well, no, for me, it needed to be Jamie and Claire, and it wasn't. And I feel like they both do that in the next episode. Like, they both make their sacrifices in the next episode. But yeah, there was also discussion in the live tweet about, is this a magical moment, or did he just see the seagull? And my answer to that is, I think I don't care.
Yeah, me too.
I think it works on both levels. So like everyone, choose your way of seeing this one. And at the end of the good sex scene, I like that Jamie goes back to this line, which I guess now is like their line that they say over and over again to like remind us of the wedding, is what it is between us.
I know. Sweet.
And so we are having a progression of using that term. Like I meant to go back, but I didn't. But like this time I like the idea that he said what it is between us doesn't change. Like we started in season 1 of him saying, what is this thing between us? And then Claire references it in episode 6, I think. And then now we've kind of referenced it in a new way. So that's evolving, which is neat. All right. On to 310. So this episode is a lot about plot, except for Elias Pound.
That's right.
Which I just love him. I'm just like... there's a lot you could say about him, but I just feel like Elias Pound is just like, he is my favorite part of this episode. Although I do have to say one more Black Sails thing. Lauren and I both know this. There's a character in Black Sails that I particularly love. Not everyone does, but I talked about him a lot. His name is Randall in Black Sails, and I love him in Black Sails. He's here. I don't love his character here. Makes me a little sad, actually. So it was like I was happy to see him, and I don't like his character here, and I don't like how like randomly menacing he is, but it is what it is. Outlander loves that shit.
They love a randomly menacing man.
That's so true.
That's so true. It's like, oh yeah, like I walked by you and you got rapey.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, what's interesting for me in this episode is that I feel like we're really getting, like, they're really going far with this whole like Jamie is not this man who we thought he was. And then he, like, his speech to Fergus about how, if you're really in love, you should want to move heaven and earth or even risk hell. I mean, I just feel like he's been hinting at this version of himself ever since they were reunited. Like, that, like, possibly the only thing grounding him now is Claire, and he will sacrifice anything for that. And that's not what I want for him. Like, that's not the person I want him to be. And then you would think that Claire's doing the opposite, because she's like back in a military setting and doing her doctor thing, and she's like really quite at home seeming. But then she sacrifices her essential self too when she pretends to need to examine Tompkins and then endangers him. Like, this is where the guy in episode 7 works for me. So it's like we have...
Right, because you need the comparison.
Right, we have rapey dude that she wants to save at all costs, and now we have a guy who she doesn't need to endanger at all, and yet she does. Like, she got the information out of him that she needed to get, and yet she still put him in a cell next to the guy who's the source of the illness.
Yeah, you're right. I'll buy that, actually.
So that did, I mean, again, the payoff is like many episodes later, and I don't think we really needed it, but I do think that they were kind of suggesting that she loses Elias Pound, like that she wasn't, this was a moment where she was distracted from her essential self, and so she didn't notice that the person she was closest to was sick, and they're suggesting that she maybe that this was the price she had to pay for not doing what she should be doing.
So that, to me, it's funny, I'm glad you put it like that, because that was troublesome to me. But I also, one thing that I'm liking just in terms of the acting is how, we've spent this whole season with her in Boston. And now here she is on this ship with this sheen of sweat, and she's got her hair up and so she's sort of going through this thing that Jamie has been like all of his traumas at the beginning, where he's like shaken from his essential self. I loved the comparison of the prim coiffed doctor in Boston to this person who is as you say, this moment where she really does put her soul at risk. Again, like, the arc for me works really well. And I think her, Katrina Balfe's acting, as like, I believed that she could still have been the same person, you know what I mean, in those prim little Jackie O suits. And again, like, I just, like, she is so good at relating to each person on board. Like, each moment that she has with any, with a sick, like, with anybody is so fraught with, her own, like, with her particular brand of empathy, which I think is just so, I prefer her being empathetic than her, like, clashing with the captain. I've just, just as like, this felt like her episode to me for that.
I think this episode worked a little bit less for me than it did for you guys. I think it worked actually one of the least for me about these, because it just felt kind of like yet another repetitive Claire cures people storyline. And I just felt like, again, we have no stakes because these are just a bunch of strangers that we don't know. And I'm all for Claire fighting the patriarchy plot lines. We got
inventing feminism.
Yep.
But they're so much more interesting when they're grounded in stuff. Like in season 1, she was clashing with Dougal a lot, which was so interesting because he was an interesting, engaging character.
Oh, I still miss Dougal.
Right.
Exactly.
Dougal's eyebrows for president.
Oh my goodness.
And then even at the beginning of this season, which she was clashing with some random academics, but to some extent she was clashing with Frank, and that kind of was her clash with the patriarchy.
Yep.
And now it's just like a bunch of faceless men who we will like never see again and who were only just introduced. So it does feel like yet again Outlander kind of having a problem with stakes and repetitive plot lines that at least me, I don't feel invested in, because these are just random people who, are not important to the story.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I mean, I think what I said was them taking a part of the story that doesn't make a whole lot of sense and making sense out of it. I mean, I think
using it as a way, as a
using
stepping stone
it for kind of larger thematic things, if I'm right about that. But that's how it felt to me. It was like that they both, we were watching both of them risk their, I guess I like how you said it, Bear, like, or one of you said, risking their souls for the sake of each other, which Jamie, it felt like, was already there, and now Claire went there too. Jamie was brought back by his children, which was like, I feel like he had redemption because of who his essential self is. Like his father self, even if he lost sight of it, they didn't.
It exists, yeah.
Right, and they brought him back. And for Claire, it's interesting because I think what brought her back also was healing, was that silly thing with Annika's husband, when she actually wasn't really great healing, but Annika felt like it was, that's how she ended up having her escape. And I like that it ended with her doing another leap. And maybe that is just repetitive, but I like
the ending was great.
Right. I just like that it was like we had the going through the stones again, but yet this to me felt almost like a greater leap of faith in a way, like that. That maybe she's understanding. I don't know. For me, it felt like her actually letting go of holding so hard to this doctor self, and letting herself actually take a chance for Jamie. Like
Mm-hmm.
that she got there. They've had all this stuff go on, and yet this felt to me like the moment where she's truly choosing him.
Yeah, I agree. And I love the Annika, like that, those moments I thought were so, again, I like watching her in conversation with those, it was lovely.
I know. No, and everything with her and Elias was just too much for me. I loved he's a character in the book that I love, and I love what he kind of means and what he means to Claire. And this actor, who I didn't look up his name, is just fantastic. Again, this feels very Master and Commander, because we have the very, very, very young officer, and that was a thing. Like there were children who were officers back then. Another Master and Commander reference is the sewing the men up in their hammocks and the last stitch going through the nose. That is actually they are completely equating Elias with Blakeney, which is my favorite character in Master and Commander. So it was like it was very meaningful to me personally, with no connection specifically to Outlander whatsoever. It was just like I was like I just like that you're taking this awesome character and tying him pretty randomly to another awesome character that don't serve the same purpose at all in the stories, but it's okay.
To me, it was making me think about Silver and Muldoon dying.
Oh no! Oh, Lauren. Yes. So yeah, my favorite line of this was, "I am not a gentlewoman, Mr. Pound." I feel like that would have been the correct title for this episode rather than Heaven and Earth.
I agree. I agree. That was well delivered.
It's also a nice little callback to season 1 where she was swearing when Jamie fell off the horse and they were all like, what?
Right.
The part that made me sad was that I shouldn't say it. Never mind. I'm not going to say what made me sad, because that's going to be a spoiler for what they are going to show us in a little bit. Yeah. There's an interaction that I wish had happened, because I love it.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say. Do you all have more thoughts about this one? And if not, we can move on to our favorite things.
It was my least favorite of all of, not least favorite, but I was losing.
Yeah.
Like I needed her to, it worked for me on some levels, but I want to keep moving.
Yes.
I have written down, like, good God, how does an episode that's supposedly high seas action feel like a boring filler episode?
I kind of know what you're saying.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely. I mean, I think other than Elias, it's and Claire. Yeah, the Elias and Claire scenes are really what does it for me, and nothing else really does. But I still like it better than the whole Jonah conflict. So I don't know. I'm not like, the whole Jonah thing did not work for me. So I can't say which one I like less. But on that note, let's talk about what we like most.
How old were you?
Wait, 15. Un ménage à trois.
A what?
2 women and 1 moi.
Christ.
Was a rather religious experience.
Let's move on to what we generally do at the end of our episodes, which is talk about what our favorite thing was.
Jenny. Right. Just Jenny.
Okay.
That whole, I went back and I rewatched it because I just was really moved by it. And it, to me, was the thing that's like, these are real stakes and it doesn't matter what time period you're in.
Yep.
It's about family and the wounds that we carry and how we like move on from them. I just, Jenny for president, Jenny.
Yay.
I'm going to have to agree with that. But I'll also add Jamie's melodramatic swimming sequence to Selkie Island, because that is the kind of melodrama that I tune into Outlander for. Not the stuff that feels like Jerry Springer.
I love it.
My favorite is Fergus's line to young Ian, where he explains what a menage a trois is, and he says 2 women and 1 moi.
And 1 moi.
Sorry.
Ah, oui.
It's just so silly, but I love it so much. Like, and he sold it like that. I can imagine an actor looking at that line in a script and just going, "Fuck, what am I going to do with this?" And he made it beautiful and wonderful.
It was adorable.
It's so cute. So cute. Yeah.
I love it very much. All right. So before we finish up, I'm just going to quickly announce the next episode of Can I Just Say? I should have the date, but I don't, is in 2 weeks from today. And Elizabeth and I will be talking about adaptations of Jane Eyre. We had so much fun talking about the book, and we're really looking forward to watching those adaptations. And we will only describe them based on the actress, not on the name of the actor, even though one of them is Toby Stephens. I'll explain that to you later, Barry, where that came from. So, yeah, ladies, tell me where we can find you on the internet. Lauren, do you want to go first?
You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is just my name, @Lauren Sarner. And I'm now also a TV reporter at the New York Post, so you can find my current TV writing there. And my interview with Nell Hudson is in my little author archive there.
Fabulous. And Barry?
You can find me on Twitter @Barry Hardiman. That's B Hardiman, BHARDYMON. And of course, you can hear me sometimes on NPR podcasts, mostly Pop Culture Happy Hour, and also occasionally It's Been a Minute with Sam Sanders.
You were great on It's Been a Minute. I enjoyed it so
thank
much.
You. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining me. And
thank you. This was so fun.
Oh, yay. I'm so glad. And yes, and then we will be covering episodes 11 through the last one, through 13, a month from today.
Woo!
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Can I Just Say podcast is a Common Room Radio production. To show your support, pledges of as little as $1 a month can make a big difference. Visit patreon.com/Common Room Radio to pledge support and access bonus features, and join the conversation by using the hashtag #CanIJustSay and follow us on Twitter @JustSayPodcast. And you can always email us at podcast@commonroomradio.com. Thanks for listening.
Husband, husband, she cried out to